On a stormy Sunday morning, the massive hall of Holy Covenant Ministries overflowed with people. Rain pounded against the roof, but the congregation didn't seem to notice. They craned their necks, whispering to one another as they waited for the arrival of Prophetess Miriam, the woman they called She Who Sees All. Some claimed she could look straight into your soul and uncover secrets you'd never told a living soul. Others swore she spoke directly with God himself. But today, there was an uneasy feeling in the air. A sudden scream shattered the murmurs. From the side of the hall, a woman named Agnes, one of Miriam's trusted aides, rushed to the front, wide-eyed and shaking. "She's done it again," Agnes cried. "Mama healed another one." The congregation erupted in cheers. But among them sat a quiet young woman named Esther, who had attended the church for months. She frowned. She had seen this so-called crippled man walking normally in the market only days before. Doubt gnawed at Esther's heart. She glanced around, but everyone else looked convinced. Awed, even. She knew Miriam was powerful, untouchable. "If I speak out, they'll tear me apart," she thought bitterly. For now, she kept silent, watching. Years ago, Miriam had been a simple girl from a humble, God-fearing family. Her parents had raised her to be honest, prayerful, and devoted to God's work. As a teenager, she led Sunday school, organized prayer meetings, and sang in the choir with a voice people said was touched by heaven. The congregation adored her. Some even whispered she was destined for greatness. No one could have imagined the path she would later take. After years of struggling to grow her small ministry, Miriam attended a grand pastors' conference in Lagos. There, she met several influential preachers who seemed to carry a strange, commanding aura. One man stood out, Pastor Benjamin. Late one evening, he pulled Miriam aside. "You are trying to be godly," he said softly, "but you will never make an impact unless you're willing to sacrifice." She frowned. "Sacrifice? I don't understand." Benjamin's eyes glinted. "There's a ceremony, a special offering that will unlock divine influence. But it will cost you dearly." Miriam hesitated. "What kind of cost?" He smiled faintly. "Your future as a mother. You must give your womb to the Lord in exchange for power." At first she recoiled. But Benjamin spoke with such conviction, painting visions of a ministry overflowing with people, of influence beyond her dreams. "God uses those willing to give everything," he insisted. That night, driven by ambition and the sting of past failures, Miriam agreed. The ritual took place in a dimly lit room filled with strange incense. Other pastors stood in a circle, chanting in an ancient tongue. Miriam's heart pounded as fear and anticipation wrestled inside her. When it was over, a strange heaviness settled over her, as though she wore a dark cloak. Something inside her had shifted. From that moment, her fortunes changed. People began flocking to her services. Testimonies poured in. Within months, she was known across the nation as She Who Sees All. Her church swelled with members from every corner of Nigeria and beyond. Wealth followed fame, and soon she was living in a luxurious mansion. But unknown to her followers, Miriam was no longer just a human preacher. She had entered a binding covenant with an ancient underwater kingdom. Every midnight, she would slip away from her mansion, shedding her human form and transforming into a serpent-like creature before disappearing beneath the river behind her home. There, in the depths, she met with others who had sworn loyalty to the Marine Queen, her true source of power. In the underwater kingdom, the Marine Queen awaited her. A towering figure with shimmering scales and serpentine eyes, she radiated both beauty and terror. "Welcome, my child," the Queen's voice echoed in Miriam's mind. "You have done well." With each visit, Miriam received new visions, sharper intuition, and the power to see into people's lives, but at a steep price. Her soul, her humanity, and her ability to bear children were now forever bound to the deep. Back on land, no one suspected the truth. To her congregation, Prophetess Miriam was a holy woman chosen by God. They knew nothing of her midnight disappearances or the rituals beneath the waves. People came from far and wide, desperate for miracles, healing, and deliverance. Many brought cash offerings, livestock, or treasured family heirlooms, believing their sacrifice would buy divine favor. Miriam's ministry became a well-oiled machine, devouring wealth and hope alike. One Sunday, she introduced a peculiar new practice. Each member was handed a small, polished mirror she called the Mirror of Life. Standing on the pulpit, her voice rang out, "This mirror is blessed by the Almighty Himself. Every morning, look into it and speak to it. You will see the part of your spirit that needs healing." The congregation clutched their mirrors as if they held the keys to heaven. They didn't know these mirrors were linked to the marine realm, allowing Miriam to spy on their lives, study their weaknesses, and exploit their fears. At night, she would summon the spirits of her members through their mirrors, gathering information to craft convincing, divine revelations. One Sunday, she called a young woman named Kemi to the front. "Kemi," Miriam said with a knowing smile, "last night, you argued with your husband about his job, didn't you?" Kemi gasped, her eyes wide. "Yes, Mama. How did you know?" Gasps and murmurs rippled through the church. "The Spirit reveals all," Miriam replied, hiding the truth that she had seen it all through Kemi's mirror. Soon, she began selling bottles of holy water and miracle oil, waving her hands over them and claiming they could heal any sickness, fix marriages, and bring financial blessings. The prices were outrageous, but people bought them eagerly. One Sunday, Esther watched as a struggling mother handed over her last savings for a small bottle of oil. Esther clenched her fists, her suspicions hardening into certainty. The following week, Miriam's sharp gaze swept over the crowd and landed on a young man in the middle row. His name was Obinna, a recent graduate who had returned from overseas with his mother. They had come seeking a blessing after hearing of She Who Sees All. Miriam's lips curved into a smile. "Young man," she beckoned, "please come forward." Obinna hesitated until his mother whispered, "Go. This could be your blessing." Slowly, he walked to the altar. Miriam raised her hand dramatically, as if catching a message from heaven. "The Lord has revealed something troubling to me, my son," she said gravely. The congregation leaned forward in anticipation. "Your life battery is running dangerously low," she announced. "If nothing is done, you will not live to see your 30th birthday. Marriage, children, all of it will be lost unless you act now." Obinna's heart pounded. "Mama, what does that mean?" "It means," Miriam whispered, "that a sacrifice must be made, a seed that costs you dearly." Obinna's mother clutched his arm in alarm. "What kind of sacrifice, Mama?" Miriam's expression softened.
"A cow."
"Not just any cow, but one strong, healthy, and without blemish. But don't worry, you need not find the animal yourself. Convert it to a seed, give the amount, and I will handle the rest." Under his mother's urging, Obinna wrote a large check. Miriam smiled as she took it. "Your obedience has pleased the Lord. Your life is safe now." As Obinna returned to his seat, relief mingled with unease. His mother whispered thanks to Prophetess Miriam, convinced they had saved her son's life. But Miriam had no intention of buying any cow or offering any sacrifice. The money went straight into her mansion project fund, a sprawling estate she was building on the outskirts of town. This tactic was nothing new. Countless members had been persuaded into giving life-saving seeds that ended up financing her lavish lifestyle. From her seat, Esther watched with tightened lips. She had seen too many of these so-called prophecies play out the same way, a public revelation, a dramatic warning, and a costly solution. "It's all a pattern," she murmured under her breath. But she knew exposing Miriam would not be easy. Her followers adored her and would fight fiercely to protect her name. A week later, during another packed service, an elderly man in a wheelchair was rolled to the front. Miriam placed her hands on his head, muttered a prayer, and with a sudden shout, commanded, "Rise and walk." The man leapt to his feet, wobbling but grinning, as the congregation erupted in joyous shouts. People wept openly at the miracle. Esther didn't cheer. She had seen that man at the market just days earlier, walking, bargaining for yams. He wasn't crippled at all. She knew it was staged, just like the others. But the rest of the congregation was too blinded by excitement to see through the act. Miriam's influence grew rapidly. Her mansion glittered with gold-plated furniture. A fleet of luxury cars lined her driveway. Personal staff attended to her every need. "God has rewarded me for my faithfulness," she often told the church, while her poorest members went hungry, still giving in hope of their own miracle. But Miriam's power wasn't limited to money. She had a way of inserting herself into people's personal lives, especially the wealthy and influential. She would claim God had shown her visions about their marriages, visions that often planted seeds of suspicion and discord. One Sunday, she called out a respected businessman named Mr. Adewale. "Brother Adewale," she said, her voice heavy with concern, "the Lord is showing me a dark cloud over your household. Someone close to you is working against your blessings." Adewale's eyes widened. "Who, Mama? Who would do such a thing?" Miriam stepped closer, lowering her voice. "It is your wife." Gasps filled the room. Adewale looked shaken. "My wife? Mama, she's a good woman." "Are you certain?" "I see her spirit entangled in envy and greed," Miriam said firmly. "She is blocking your breakthroughs. But with my special guidance, the curse can be broken." The businessman swallowed hard, caught between loyalty and fear. Over the following weeks, Miriam counseled Adewale privately. She urged him to distance himself emotionally from his wife, insisting that full deliverance required obedience to her instructions. In truth, her motives were far from holy. She intended to draw him into her personal web. Late one evening, under the pretext of a special cleansing prayer, she invited Adewale to her mansion. The soft candlelight, the soothing incense, the carefully chosen words, all worked together to weaken his guard. Miriam leaned in, her voice like honey. "Imagine a life free from hindrance, Adewale. Imagine walking in blessings every day." It wasn't long before the deliverance sessions turned into something else entirely. Adewale soon became entangled in an affair with Miriam, convinced that his loyalty to her would secure his blessings. This was not an isolated case. Miriam had repeated the same pattern with other wealthy men in the congregation, skillfully planting doubt about their wives, then drawing them into her private sphere under the guise of spiritual cleansing. Esther's concern deepened. "This is more than false prophecy," she whispered to herself one night. "It's a web that destroys families." She began quietly speaking to former members who had left the church, gathering stories of broken marriages, drained bank accounts, and emotional manipulation. One former member, a middle-aged man named Samson, told her, "She convinced me my brother was cursing me. I stopped speaking to him for years, Esther. And all the while, she kept demanding seeds to break the curse." His voice cracked with regret. "By the time I realized the truth, my family was gone." Another troubling practice soon caught Esther's attention. Miriam claimed she could bless any container of water, turning it into a holy cure for all problems: sickness, financial troubles, marital strife. Members would leave jerrycans in her office, sometimes for days, waiting for prayers. But behind closed doors, Miriam simply poured a pinch of salt and sugar into each can, murmuring a few words before sending them home. "Now drink from it each morning, and your life will change," she would instruct. The slight taste difference convinced people the water was truly blessed. One evening, Esther overheard two of Miriam's closest aides, Felix and Linda, talking near the church storage room. "Can you believe they pay that much just for a dash of salt and sugar?" Linda laughed. Felix smirked. "As long as they keep paying, who cares?" Esther's stomach turned. This was the confirmation she needed. Still, she knew exposing Miriam's scams wasn't enough. She had heard rumors of something darker, whispers of midnight rituals by the river. "If I can see it with my own eyes," she thought, "people will have no choice but to believe me." One moonless night, Esther hid in the bushes near the river behind Miriam's mansion. She clutched her phone tightly, its camera ready. Her heart thudded as the minutes crawled past midnight. Then she saw her. Miriam emerged from her mansion, her movements slow and graceful, as though she were gliding rather than walking. She stopped at the riverbank, lifted her face to the sky, and began chanting in a strange, ancient language. The sound sent chills racing up Esther's spine. Before Esther's eyes, Miriam's skin shimmered, scales replacing flesh. Her legs fused together into a serpentine tail, her eyes glowing in the dark. Without a splash, she slid into the river and vanished beneath the surface. Esther gasped, nearly dropping her phone. What she had just witnessed was beyond fraud. It was something inhuman. Esther's pulse hammered in her ears as she backed away from the riverbank. She had the footage, but her mind raced. If I release this, she'll come for me. Still, fear couldn't outweigh the truth. She knew now that her mission wasn't just about exposing fraud. It was about stopping a force that preyed on the souls of the desperate. The next morning, Esther attended service as usual, trying to hide her shaken state. Miriam's gaze found her instantly. The prophetess's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. During the altar call, Miriam stepped forward and spoke in a voice that carried to every corner of the hall. "There is one here carrying a heavy burden," she announced, her eyes locked on Esther. "Come, my daughter. Let Mama lift it from you." The congregation murmured as Esther walked forward. Miriam placed a cold, firm hand on her forehead. Leaning close, she whispered, "You are treading dangerous waters, child. Some secrets are not meant to be uncovered." Esther's stomach twisted, but she kept her expression calm. "If the truth comes from God," she whispered back, "it cannot be hidden." Miriam's smile didn't falter, but her eyes narrowed. "Be careful, Esther. Curiosity can cost you more than you are willing to pay." With a flourish, she blessed Esther publicly, sending her back to her seat. To the crowd, it looked like a moment of spiritual care, but Esther knew it was a warning. Over the following weeks, Miriam's sermons began to carry strange, pointed messages about rebellious daughters and snakes hiding among the sheep. Though she never said Esther's name, many of the followers began giving her suspicious glances. Despite the mounting tension, Esther doubled her efforts. She met quietly with disillusioned members, collecting testimonies. "People need to hear your stories," she urged. "We can't let her keep doing this." Slowly, more victims came forward, some even providing receipts, messages, and photos. At night, Esther prayed for protection. She had begun to feel an oppressive heaviness in her home, strange knocks at her door at odd hours, the sound of running water in her kitchen when no tap was open. She suspected Miriam's spiritual attacks had begun. One night, Esther awoke to the sound of whispering in her bedroom. Her eyes darted to the corner, where a shadow moved against the wall despite no light source. She gripped her Bible, praying aloud until the presence faded. Sweat soaked her clothes, but she refused to give in to fear. By now, her evidence file was thick: videos, audio recordings, sworn statements. The river footage was the crown jewel. This will break her hold, Esther told herself. But she knew releasing it too soon could put her in greater danger. She needed the right moment. That moment came when a well-known news outlet agreed to run the story, promising full protection for their source. Esther handed over everything. "Once this airs, there's no turning back," the journalist warned. "She'll know it's you." Esther nodded. "Let her know. The truth belongs to everyone." The exposé aired on a Friday evening. Across the country, televisions and social media feeds lit up with shocking footage, staged miracles, recorded testimonies of exploitation, and finally, the Midnight River video. Viewers watched in stunned silence as Prophetess Miriam transformed before vanishing beneath the water. The headline blazed, "Holy Covenant Ministries, Prophetess or Predator?" Reactions were swift. Longtime members sat frozen in disbelief. Others broke down in tears, mourning the years of devotion and sacrifice they had poured into the ministry. "She prayed for my sick child," one woman sobbed on camera. How could she be that? Anger rippled through communities as people realized the depth of the deception. On Sunday, the church was half empty. Miriam walked onto the stage in her finest robe, her smile strained. "Do not be deceived by the enemy's lies," she declared. "The devil fears the power of God's chosen vessels." But her words lacked the old command. Whispers filled the air, whispers of doubt, not awe. Esther attended that day, standing quietly at the back. She watched as Miriam tried to reclaim control, calling for special offerings to reverse the curses brought on by the accusations. But fewer people responded. Some even walked out mid-sermon, shaking their heads. By the next week, law enforcement had stepped in. Bank accounts were frozen. Several of Miriam's aides disappeared overnight, fearing arrest. The mansion gates, once swarming with admirers, now stood deserted. Miriam herself became reclusive, granting no interviews, her public image shattered. Esther's phone buzzed constantly, strangers thanking her for her courage, former members offering to help expose other fraudulent ministers. She felt relief, but also a deep sadness for those still trapped in blind devotion, unable to accept the truth. One afternoon, she met with a small group of ex-members in a modest cafe. "This isn't just about Miriam," Esther told them. "We need to teach people discernment so they don't fall into the same trap again." Heads nodded around the table. The mission was far from over. Meanwhile, rumors swirled that Miriam had returned to the river more frequently since the scandal. Some claimed she was seeking greater power to strike back. Others said she was bargaining for protection from the forces of law. Whatever the truth, her public influence was gone, replaced by fear and infamy. Months later, Esther stood outside the now-abandoned church. Weeds crept through the cracks in the pavement. The once polished doors hung loosely on their hinges. She closed her eyes, remembering the stormy Sunday when it all began. "It's over," she whispered, though she knew spiritual deception would never truly end. Turning away, she offered one last prayer. "Lord, let truth always shine brighter than lies." Then she walked into the sunlight, ready to continue her fight against the darkness, wherever it might appear next.